Okay, so the purpose of the grant is to reduce landfill waste generated here in Hamilton County. Activities can happen outside of Hamilton County, and waste can be diverted from outside of Hamilton County. But in order to get any funding, it does have to divert waste generated here in Hamilton County, and that's the numbers we're going to be looking at in your proposal. Next slide. So communities can apply. So that's the cities and townships and villages here in Hamilton County. Uh, Schools like K to 12 schools, universities, technical schools, nonprofit organizations, and businesses can all apply for this grant. Next slide. We have $150,000 budgeted for this program in 2025. The limit per grant project is 15,000. We do require a 25% match. That match can be in kind for communities, schools, and nonprofit organizations, but we do require a cash match for for-profit businesses. Next slide. So these are just some examples of potential projects. I don't want to stifle you from, your own creativity, but just to give you some ideas. Organics is a priority waste stream for us right now. So you'll see a lot as far as food. Wasted food reduction, technology and or equipment to reduce wasted food. Food rescue and recovery. So we've funded lots of cold storage to accommodate rescue food and technology to facilitate donations of surplus food. Composting. So that would be like equipment to implement or expand on small or medium scale composting infrastructure in the area, including collection. Replacement of disposables with reusables, so dishwashers and reusable tableware, and reusable pallets and shipping containers, things like that. Specialty material waste reduction. So that is typically items that you cannot recycle curbside, that require extra processing or just a little bit more difficult to get out of the waste stream. And education and promotion. So for communities, this could really be helpful for you to do things to increase participation in your current waste reduction programs. Next slide. Some unallowable costs would be entertainment. So that includes food and beverages. Operational is not allowed. So think of existing salaries, utilities, rent, mortgage, insurance, etc. Existing recycling hauling, that goes for composting hauling too. So if you already have the service and you're finding trouble funding it or would like to get funding outside of your organization, unfortunately, that is not something we can fund. We will consider funding new services if you have a strong sustainability plan. So for example, maybe you want to start a community compost drop-off site and you want to get an idea of how much you need to budget in the next fiscal year to support that site. And you're using the grant to gather that information. That might be an example of something that we might consider funding. And we will not fund garbage receptacles. The exception to that is if they are physically attached to the recycling receptacle. Next slide. So as far as the timeline is concerned, there is no deadline to apply. You can apply at any time, and proposals are considered on a first come, first served basis. Within 1 month, you should receive a funding decision. And then at that point, we'll get the contract out to you. If you are, if we do decide to fund the project. It usually takes about 3 months for the contract to go through all of the everywhere it needs to go to get to the point where we can actually release funding for the project. And so once the project begins, then you have 1 year to completely implement the project. And so all funds must be expended within that first year, and the project must be completely up and running. And there will be the first year report will be due. And then on the 2-year anniversary, we will have a final report due, which gives us a snapshot of how much the project diverts in 1 full year of operation. Next slide, please. So the evaluation criteria is important to know. This is what our grant review committee uses to grade each or evaluate each proposal. So number 1 is the focus on landfill reduction, and that's in the following order of preference. So waste reduction will get the most points. Reuse and repair will get the second most points, and composting, recycling, and energy recovery actually gets the least. However, don't be discouraged. That is what we tend to fund the most. So send us your composting and recycling proposals. Just know that we really would like to see waste reduction projects. The next is that the project diverts a significant amount of landfill waste and or reaches a significant number of people in a way that encourages behaviors that reduce landfill waste. So when we talk about the people who are being reached for these projects, if it's, for example, like a public recycling program, the people who have access to those public recycling receptacles would be an example of people reached. If there are people who are rescuing surplus food, so it's the people who are going up and picking it up and getting it to the rescue organization. It's not necessarily the people who are benefiting from the rescued food, because that is not something that is actually changing their behaviors. So if you have a campaign to teach people how to reduce their wasted food, so that all the people in that educational campaign could be considered. If you're teaching them how to like store it better or longer, or use what's available at the food rescue organizations, places, things like that. So if you have questions about that, feel free to reach out to me. The next one is project shows plans for sustainable funding in the future. So we want to see that this is not just going to end once the grant funds run out. We really like to fund equipment to get the project up and running. It's something that you don't need to continuously fund. Applicant demonstrates the ability to complete the project objectives. So we want to see that you have thought of everything involved with the project, and that you can fund it with the grant funds that you are requesting. Proposal is complete and easy to understand. That there is detailed information provided on budget items, and all budget items are cost effective and necessary for the project. So we want to see that you have received quotes, that you have done your research, that the expenses are all necessary. We don't want to see a padded budget, just get yourself up to 15,000. We want to know what you need to actually have this project work. And project serves communities or individuals facing barriers and or resources target communities. Currently, our target community is Addison. We believe we will have a second community in March or April of this year figured out. That is not a necessity, but you do get extra points if the project serves these communities. And if the applicant has received grant funds from us in the past, the grant administration has been positive. So if you have not received grant funds from us in the past, you will automatically get the most points as we don't have any experience with you. But if you have in the past, we will look at previous grant administration and give you points or take away points based on that experience. Next slide. So we have a new online form, which is pretty exciting and a little scary, but we have tested it, so we hope that it will work for you. But we would love feedback that, if something is not working, definitely let us know right away so we can fix it. Elise has put in the chat the link to where you can find this form and more information about the grant project. Right now on our current website, if you scroll all the way down to grants and click on that, it will take you to the grant webpage where there is a direct link to this. We are getting a new webpage here soon though, so I'm not sure how that might change. But anyway, on some benefits from the online form is that it's paperless. You do have the ability to save your work and come back to it later. At the bottom, you'll see there's a save and continue later button. And you can move back and forth through the form as you need to. Next slide. So section 1 is basically fill in the blanks. So it's information about the type of organization, who is applying for the grant, who the contact person is. In this section is where you will upload your W-9 form and any nonprofit documentation, any nonprofit status documentation that you have. You'll provide an overview of the cost and the impact of the grant. So that's the waste diverted, the people reached, both grant funded and match funded costs, and a proposed project summary. So that is just a short 1 to 2 sentence overview of what your project is. So if it's to improve your compost site, that's what you would say. Equipment to improve our compost site. If it's to rescue more food and refrigeration to preserve it, refrigeration for rescued food. Just a really brief overview. Next slide. Section 2 is where we really get into the meat of the project. So there is, we'll ask for a project description. And so you want to describe the project, the objectives, credentials of key project managers. If the project serves communities or individuals facing barriers or our target communities, this is where you will provide evidence of how and who that will serve. The next, number 2 is the project schedule or timeline. So just describe the schedule of events, tasks, major milestones. When putting together the timeline, keep in mind that it will take up to 4 months before you receive funding. You might receive it sooner, but just kind of keep that in mind when you're putting together that timeline. The sustainability of the project, we want to know your plans for sustainably funding this project in the future once the grant funds run out. Project results are, so we want you to provide a basis for the estimates of tons of materials the project will divert from the landfill, and or the number of people reached in a way that encourages behaviors that reduce waste from landfills. So this is really where we want to know how you came up with those numbers. Um, Weight estimates should be in tons, not pounds. And people reach should only be in a way that encourages behaviors that reduce waste. You can also include any other evaluation data you plan to measure. We would love to know your other goals in this project. Cooperation, so that's any cooperating organizations that you plan to be working with. And we would like you to describe their roles and include contact information for the people that you will be working with. You can upload your letters of support in this section. You must upload a letter of support from the governing body of the organization applying for the grant. So if that is yourself, you can sign the letter yourself. But basically what we want to do is we want to make sure that there's not just some kind of rogue employee applying for a grant. We want to see that the leadership from the organization is on board. Also include letters of support from any of the cooperating organizations that you'll be working with. And then there's also a place for you to upload additional supporting documents. So if you want to include pictures and charts and just stuff to make the proposal more visual for the grant review committee, this is a good place to upload those types of documents. Next slide. Section 3 is really focused on the budget. So there is a place to include a budget narrative. We want detailed information on both grant and match funded, including in-kind expenses. So explain the need for everything in the budget. If you are requesting funds for temporary personnel to get the project up and running. So include the job description, the requirements, the evaluation of the employees, the expected hours, the salary. If you are requesting equipment, explain the necessity for the equipment. Projects with vague line item requests will likely not be funded. So if in question, just even a really short sentence for each item in your budget, put that in the narrative. On the budget table, we had to get creative to make this work in our form. So on the left, you can enter the description for each budget item. And then on the right, there is a corresponding number for each budget item. So that's where you would enter how much of that budget item is going to be grant funded and how much of it is going to be match funded. You want to include this for any in-kind items as well. So we want to know every budget item and the corresponding match and grant funded proposed. And then this is also the section where you can upload quotes that you have received for all of these items, pictures of what you plan to purchase. The more information you include in here, the better. We really do not like vague budget requests. And next. And section 4 is simply a checklist to make sure you didn't forget anything. Next. I am happy to help anyone who needs it with grant writing assistance. You can email me draft proposals for high-level feedback. You can call me or email me. We can set up meetings to discuss your project and what I believe will or will not be funded. don't want you to waste your time applying for something that we will not fund, or our grant review committee's time reviewing projects that I don't believe we would fund. So please reach out. I'm happy to be that resource for you. Next slide. If you are requesting equipment in this grant, we do typically have a equipment payback requirement in the contract. So if you were to stop using the equipment within the first year of purchasing it, we would require 100% of the grant funds refunded to us. Within the 2 years of the purchase of the equipment, 70%. And within 3 years of the purchase, we would request back 40% of the grant funds to purchase that equipment. Next. So we have two reports that we will require. The first year report will include all the expenditures. So you will need to make sure you have all the receipts of both grant and match funded items, and documentation if it's in kind. So if you are awarded the grant, we will have a meeting. I'll discuss that further with you. You also will need to keep track of the waste diverted and the people reached during that first year, and what project activities have happened in the first year. The project does need to be completely up and running in the first year, and all grant funds must be expended and match funds in that first year. The final report is due 2 years from the start date of the grant, and that is to give us a snapshot of what the impact is of the grant once it is completely up and running in one full year of implementation. So you will need to keep track of the waste diverted during that second year, the people reached during that second year, and then we'll have some questions on the project activities and an evaluation. We want to know what you might change or keep the same, or what you would have done differently. We use this information for other people who are interested in implementing similar projects. Next, please. Another thing we'll have in the contract is the recognition requirement. So we want to make sure that you know that we expect you to recognize us in any kind of publications, social media, signage, giveaways, swag. Basically, if it's something that you would put your logo on, we expect you to put our logo on it related to this project. Next. And that's it. So we'll take questions. So Elise, do you have anything in the Q&A?
Oops, sorry.
Oops, sorry. Didn't unmute myself. No, we've got it.
We've got two questions. Katrina's wondering, she's thinking of using this grant potentially for the Walnut Hills Area Council, and she's curious if you know if they can use NSP funds for the match. I'm not sure if you know that answer, Chair.
I do not. What are NSP funds?
Katrina, if you could type in there what are NSP funds, that would be very helpful. While we're working on the NSP fund thing, Ted has a question. Once a grant is awarded, where do they go to request funds?
So if you are awarded a grant, I will set up a meeting with you and we will discuss the next steps of the process. But you basically send me a invoice for the grant amount, and then we will send you a check.
And
I will say with matching funds, we do not want to see that you need to request another grant for the matching funds. We do require that matching funds are available when you receive the grant. So if you need to do fundraising for the matching funds, you need to have secured that before you apply for the grant. So I don't know if that helps. We also want to see in the matching funds, whether it's cash or in kind, that you have some skin in the game. So I don't know if that helps answer that question.
Okay, so Katrina added more to this. So the NSP funds are from the neighborhood support funds that are awarded to the council already.
Okay, I mean, if you have them available. Yes.
So that would be
I
allowed
would say
under
yes, you can use them. Yeah, we're not asking where you're coming up with the funds for the match. We just want to make sure that you have them available.
Okay, great. And those are the only questions we have as of now, but I can check the chat just to be sure. And like Cher had said earlier, in case you missed this, I have put the links to our website with the grant page in the chat and all that information, as well as the direct link to the whole waste reduction innovation grant packet with all the things, all the instructions to apply, the checklist, everything you need to know, plus the actual link to the application as well. So both of those links are available to you, and it should be easy to access in the chat. And I will be sending out this recording to you all when it is available later.
Never hesitate to reach out to me. I am always available to answer these questions. Like I said, I don't want to waste anyone's time applying for something that we cannot fund. And I can offer also often I can offer examples of other projects that people have applied for that are similar, and even send you successful proposals to help you craft your own.
Great. Thank you, Cher.
Well, thank you, everyone. It looks like we are just at the half an hour mark, so I will let you get back to your day. And it was, I look forward to working with you.